The Locked Room. In 1975, a man named Samer bought an old house in the outskirts of a small town. The house had been abandoned for several years and was being sold at a very low price. Despite warnings from the locals that the house was cursed and had been the site of many strange incidents in the past, Samer decided to buy it. He believed that these stories were just myths with no real basis. Before moving in, Samer took a tour of the house, and despite its dilapidated condition, he felt something strange overwhelming him. The place was eerie and dark, but Samer ignored it and decided to settle in. He began cleaning the house and preparing it for living, but he still felt an inexplicable sense of unease. Upon moving in, Samer noticed something strange. All the rooms in the house were open except for one room on the upper floor. The room was locked with a rusty padlock, and its key was missing. He tried to break the lock several times, but he failed. He felt something unsettling about that room. He decided to leave it for another day, but he felt that the room held a great secret. After several days, strange noises began emanating from the house at night. He would hear the sound of heavy footsteps walking upstairs, even though he was living alone in the house. At first, he thought the sound was just the result of the house's old structure or the wind moving the broken furniture. But he began to feel uneasy when the noises repeated each night. The sound came from the locked room, as if the room itself was breathing. On the fifth night, something happened that Samer couldn't explain. He woke up to a loud banging sound coming from the locked room. The sound was terrifying, as if someone was knocking on the door from the inside. Samer decided to find out what was inside the room at any cost, so he called a specialized carpenter. Together they managed to break the lock and open the door. At that moment, Samer felt a cold draft coming from the room, even though the weather outside was hot. The air was unnaturally cold, to the point where his body shivered. Inside the room, there was an old chair in the center, with cut ropes scattered on the floor. The walls were covered with strange writings that seemed to be ancient inscriptions. These writings were filled with secrets that Samer couldn't understand. On the floor, there was a small, tightly sealed box. Unable to suppress his curiosity, Samer opened the box with a screwdriver. Inside the box, he found a small fabric doll, but its eyes were unnaturally strange, almost like real human eyes. As he opened it, Samer felt as if the room was spinning around him, and he heard a voice whisper in his ear, "You shouldn't have opened this box." Samer ran out of the room, but things became even stranger. The lights would turn off and on by themselves, doors slammed shut violently, and even the mirror in the bedroom reflected incomprehensible images. Everything in the house began to evoke terrifying emotions. As days passed, Samer started to notice that the doll, which had been in the box, appeared in different places around the house every day. He would find it in corners, on the bed, or beside him while he slept. He tried to get rid of it by throwing it into the river, but the next day it would return to the house. He couldn't understand how it kept returning, but he felt that something supernatural was surrounding it. Samer began sleeping with great anxiety every night, and in the middle of the night, he would discover the doll sitting beside his bed, staring at him with its human-like eyes. He couldn't get rid of it, and every time he tried to ignore it, the events became even more terrifying. On the final night he spent in the house, Samer woke up to find himself tied to the chair in the locked room. The doll was standing in front of him, its glowing eyes intensely watching him. He felt as if time had stopped, and he began to realize that the room was not just an ordinary room. It was a gateway to another world, a world filled with spirits and entities that couldn't be explained. The room was a junction between two worlds, and he was the victim. At that moment, the events began to accelerate terrifyingly. The walls cracked open, and strange sounds emerged from them. Samer felt something strange entering his body, as if his soul was starting to leave him. He tried to scream, but his voice was suffocated in his throat. Eventually, Samer disappeared that night, and he was never found again. The locals believe that the house took Samer's soul, and that he became part of the eternal curse that haunts the place. The house still stands, and no one dares approach it after those events. Stories are told of people passing by the house and seeing strange lights appear inside the rooms. It is said that anyone who approaches the house hears footsteps following them, as if the spirits still live there.